All right. Good morning, everyone. I just want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So whatever it is that I talk about here today, we'll have it posted online afterwards. So if you have any additional questions or if you need to review it, you can actually access the video. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here today. Today's webinar is an introduction to Matrix and talking about some of the challenges that our customer face. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, which is the company behind Matrix. So over the course of the past decade, I've talked to thousands of customers, seen almost every single possible challenges around prioritization and understanding what it is that you can do to make your organization more effective, more efficient. So today's webinar is going to be relatively high level. What I mean by that is, we'll talk about how Party Matrix can help and how it can actually, how you can get the most out of Party Matrix with the minimum amount of work. There's many things that we can't really go into details, and that's not the point anyways. The other thing I do want to mention too is that there's a chat section here in the webinar. And so if you have a message or you have some questions, you can go ahead and send us a message there, and I'll keep an eye out on it. And if there's something that I can answer, I'd certainly be happy to. Other than that, let's get started. So the question I have for you is, are you always focused on work that has the most impact? And there's three challenges that's very recurring that I've seen over and over again, which is one, within an organization, team members have trouble understanding what's priority right now. And that's typically the challenge when we have more things to do than the resources to do them. If we have 5 things to do and the ability to tackle all of that, easy peasy. But what happens is typically you have a lot more, and then organizations have trouble understanding what each person should be working on to get the most impact. And the corollary to that is it's really hard to keep track on the status of work, especially when you have many areas of responsibilities. No longer are we focused on one single project or one single initiative. Instead, we're being pulled in so many different directions. And not only that, the communication around all of those challenges actually come from so many different sources as well. We get emails, text messages, Teams messages, Slack messages, and this creates a very stressful environment with far too many contexts. And if this resonates with you, then that's one thing I want you to recognize is that you're not alone. In fact, the vast majority of us face this every single day, myself included. So comes Party Matrix. And so what is Party Matrix? Party Matrix is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct efficient meetings, and get real-time status updates on the critical projects and priorities. At the end of the day, Party Matrix is a communication tool. So what that means is it's helping you communicate to the rest of the organization, or even to yourself even, what are the things you need to work on at any point in time. So how does Party Matrix tackle those 3 problems that I mentioned? First, Party Matrix leverages something called the 4-quadrant method as the core methodology to promote effective prioritization. So the hardest part about understanding what your priorities are is actually being able to go and actually sort it out within the full context of everything that you have. And the 4-quadrant method is a very simple way to surface up those priorities. Second, Party Matrix provides many different views on the tasks that you have across different dimensions of time, of people, of projects to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And then finally, Party Matrix provide really deep integrations into systems you already use. This webinar is on Microsoft Teams. We're probably one of the most integrated solution in the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. And then we have ways for you to actually bring in emails. So you're able to have one central place to understand what your priorities are and how to organize them. So what makes Party Matrix different? It's the only project email and meeting management software that is Microsoft 365 Security certified across our web app, Teams app, and Outlook app. We leverage AI to actually help teams and individuals achieve their goals and actually come up with ideas on how to tackle those goals. And then we create templates that allow you to go and use within your organization so you can save time and resources. And then finally, it's available as a SaaS, HIPAA, and Azure government cloud. So let's go back to that core concept of prioritization. There's a quote attributed to President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Here's a question I have for you. This morning, when you woke up or when you first got to the office or to your desk, how did you decide what you work on, right? Is the first thing that you did open up your email and check your emails and then start responding to them? Were those emails actually urgent? Or well, rather, are those emails actually important? And what happens is the philosophy that we all really end up having to do in the modern era is last in, first out. So what that means is anything that requires our attention at this moment in time is what pulls us into actually answering that and actually working on those things, whether or not it's important or not. And so if you really think about it, if you were to start your day like this morning or right now, and if you were to put everything away, what would is that you should work on to maximize the impact you have within your own work, within your own organization? And that is the core of this quote. Now, putting this to practice is what we've done using the 4-quadrant methodology. So what happens is, imagine take out a piece of paper, start writing everything you have to do. So you have 100 different tasks, action items that's across all spectrum of all your projects, across all your areas of responsibilities, right? That's very, very overwhelming. Now, how do you decide what to work on? Do you start at the top? Do you start at the bottom? Do you start somewhere in the middle? And another question, if you were to add something to that list, do you start at the top or bottom, or you add something in the middle? And that's the challenge with every single task, project management software, every single to-do list. Doesn't matter if you use a sticky note or not. So imagine now, then you take all those tasks, those 100 different things that you have, and start putting them into buckets. And so you can think of the bucket of importance and versus urgency. Okay. So then what are the things that are important and urgent? What are the things that are important but not urgent? And then what are the things that are urgent but not important? And then sort of everything else. There's no reason to ever think about things that are not important, not urgent. If you have that, get rid of them right away. So hopefully you're able to eliminate some stuff right off the bat. But if you were to look at your list now, suddenly you have things in bucket. And if everything is important and urgent, then something's wrong. If everything's important and urgent, then nothing is important and urgent. So the idea around this is that forced prioritization, and that's the hardest thing. In fact, if you are not able to do that, there's no software out there that can help you truly focus on what matters most. And Priority Matrix is, at the end of the day, not a solution that will solve that for everybody. At the end of the day, Priority Matrix is a communication tool, a really good communication tool for you to go and really look at the big picture and see how everything fits together. So take that list that you have, put into these buckets. Now, the next part is actually really interesting, which is take your quadrant and start walking around the office and compare notes. Do you agree with your manager on every single thing that you have? If your manager were to look at that list and say, oh, that's perfect, I'm perfectly aligned with everything there, and then you go to your colleague and your direct report and they all agreed as well, then you're golden, right? That means everyone within the organization is perfectly aligned. But I think that's rare. In fact, I think that's one of those things that's really never truly happens because we seldom have that hard conversation around priorities. So if you were to look at Priority Matrix, what the Eisenhower Matrix does is it creates alignment because, one, it forces you to prioritize. But success from using Priority Matrix isn't necessarily about finding what everyone agrees on. It's discovering the disagreements. And so if you were to look at that list again and comparing that to what your manager and your executives are looking at, and then suddenly you start identifying, wait a minute, this is something that's really important, but it's not in the important quadrant, then suddenly you've identified something that is actually going to create value. And so value from Priority Matrix isn't about marking things as done. It's about surfacing up those disagreements. So as I emphasized earlier, this webinar is recorded, and so we'll be posting this on our website. And then I also want to share our contact support at Affluence, and you saw my email, hi@affluence.com. And so just in case there's any additional questions, but now we're actually going to jump to the product itself. And hopefully I can walk you through Priority Matrix and how you can solve some of those challenges that we just talked about. All right, with that, I'm going to jump to the demo. As I mentioned, within the chat section, you can send messages, and if I get a chance to answer those, I'd be happy to, and make sure that I covered those. All right, so what you're seeing now on the screen is Party Matrix web application. And so if you were to go to affluence.com, click on web app, or if you go to partymatrix.com, this is the view that you see. I'm going to start at the very, very basic level, which is the concept of project. What is a project? A project, you can think of it as one, an initiative, or two, something that has a start date and end date, maybe work for a client or work for a customer, or even a manufacturing process, anything along those lines, or ongoing work. So there's many, many different types of project, but the project at the end of the day is the fundamental behind Matrix. So every project in Matrix has that 4 quadrants. So I'm going to go ahead and go to project. I'm going to click on show all project here, and I'm going to create a brand new project. So I'm going to go ahead and create a project called team priorities here. Or actually, I'm going to create Q3 goals for 2023. Okay, so I'm going to create that project. And then when you create a project in Matrix, you can actually add additional information, and you can actually choose the type of templates there are. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the basic Matrix template, and I'm going to just choose a color and add a project. And right now, what you're seeing is the digital version of that 4 quadrants that I mentioned. We have the do now, we have the do later, the delegate, and the postpone. And everything that you do has to go within one of these quadrants. And that's hard. That's not easy, right? Because it's so easy for us to put things in a list. It's so hard for us to decide where things really go. But let's create a sample task. So as you see how when I hover over a quadrant, there's an add item. So when you think of an item in Matrix, what are they? Well, they could be tasks, they could be emails, they could be goals, they could be action items that requires my attention. So an item has a very, flexible definition. But I'm going to go ahead and say follow up with webinar participants. Okay, that's going to be the task that I create. But one thing I can do too is I can decide, okay, I'm going to follow webinar participants, but when do I do that? I can actually say due in 3 days. And so the way Matrix works is we use natural language. We use intelligence wherever applicable to actually create those due dates for you to save you time and effort. So you can see now when I create this task, it actually went and created the due date for me. So I didn't have to go and create the due dates. And if I were to create a task and I look on the right-hand side here, this is what's called the item details. And so the item details break down all this additional information that you have into from the tasks themselves, and you're able to do several things. One, what project does it belong in? And then whether or not something is extremely important. And if so, I can star it. Starring it really surfaces at the top, make it very, very visible for me to see that this is something I really need to do. And then below that, you have owner. So in Matrix, every task has an owner. And the idea is actually you only have one owner. You can't have multiple owners. The idea is that you want to understand who's responsible for this action item and who's going to get it done. And then when that task is done, then it attributes to that person. But what I can also do is I can invite additional followers to a task. And then we have progress, effort, which is how long, how much time it'll take to get something done. And then you have the due dates, and then reminders. And reminders is actually different from due dates. And there's a reason for that. Imagine if I want to follow up with the webinar participants in 3 days, but if I wait, then maybe I actually don't have all the stuff in place, right? Because I want to make sure the recording's uploaded and all that. So then I want to go and say, actually remind me on a daily basis. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I can click on here and actually set reminders, but Matrix is intelligent enough where actually I can just type it in instead, and what it's going to do is going to set me those reminders. And so when we go back to all those tasks that you have, all those priorities that you have, one, you need to know what they are, but then two, you need to know when to get started on them. And so Party Matrix has all these additional metadata that you can add to your task around the due dates, around the reminders, to make sure that these tasks surface back up for you, and that you're actually going to get started on them. And if I hover down a little bit more, there's a chat section. So we talked about the challenges of having so many areas where you have communication around so many different things. How often, or when was the last time, you walked down the hallway, you talked to one of your colleagues, and you had an amazing brainstorm session, and you talked about some really, really powerful things. And then afterwards, or maybe rather, 3 months later, when you're trying to think about all those things you talked about, you lost the context because you forgot all those conversations that you have. And then likewise, you have emails that sent back and forth. Likewise, you have messages in your communication softwares in the back and forth, but it's jumping back and forth between so many different action items and so forth. You don't actually have a single place to track that. So the way the chat works, you can think of it as a conversation within that context. And so when I type messages here, right, and when I actually type notes here, it's recording it in an immutable way, which means it cannot be changed. And what's amazing about that is 3 months from now, 6 months from now, I can look at it and understand what decisions were made, and what notes, what we talked about. And then not only that, if I need someone else to also come in and be part of the conversation, they have the full context. And that's extremely helpful. So the chat is a very valuable way to keep a record of all the things you talk about in a task, but only specific to that task, because you're not talking about anything else. And that's the chat section. And then you have notes. It's pretty straightforward. Notes is just additional information, but within Matrix, you're able also to create subtasks too. So directly from the notes here, and you can say, subtask 1, subtask 2, subtask 3. And then if you have 3 subtasks and you mark 1 as done, then our system updates the progress at 33%, right? And then you have resources. Resources, you can think of as additional information that you can attach to the task. And that could be, again, a link to the video that I upload, or it could be documents, files, Excel sheets, or also it can link to other Matrix action item as well. So for example, I can actually go and link it to another task. And then if you link it to another task in Matrix, we're able to build Gantt charts and dependencies for you automatically. So that, in a sense, is what an action item is. And one thing that's really easy about this is that you can see how I've just created this task. And then if I want to reprioritize it, I can just drag and drop. And so Matrix is all about that simple experience for you to be able to, again, create your priorities and then moving that back and forth within the quadrant themselves, so that everyone who's looking at this project will understand exactly what the priorities are. And so when you have a conversation about Matrix, or I'm sorry, you have a conversation about your goals and so forth, the idea is that you can open up Matrix, right? Go to the project that you all care about, project it on the screen, and you start looking at it. And first of all, see where you disagree on the priorities, and then 2, looking at the things in the top left, and making sure that those are all marked as done. And here's something that's actually I learned from actually talking to a customer, which is if you have everything in quadrant 1, right, which is the do now, the important and urgent quadrants, then you're doing something wrong, because then everything's on fire. And so that means you're not planning ahead, because everything is behind schedule and so forth. And so ideally, if you've done an incredible job of managing your priorities, this is relatively empty. And this is where it's at. This is, quadrant 2, the do later, is where you're planning your work and so forth. And so just keep that in the back of your mind as you use Matrix and seeing where you're spending your time. Are you spending the time in the right quadrants, or you're just constantly fighting fires? And if you're constantly fighting fires, that's when you have a conversation again with your team. As you can see here, the way that I'm describing the challenges in using Matrix or any software in particular, it's never about the software, because it's, the software is only one small part of the equation. The hardest part is around communication and being able to go and make it very, very visual for everyone to be that aligned. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to some of the other capabilities around Matrix, because we talked about those challenges, which is, again, bringing in various sources of data, and where you might get delegation from. So this is, again, a project. This is, again, within a task. Actually, let me show you how to modify a project first of all. So after you create that project, you can actually go to here, And this is now what's called the project details. And so the way the project details work is, one, you have the project name, right? And so again, it could be an initiative, it could be a customer project. You can star it, and starring it actually surfaces to the very top. And then below that, you have members. And so members are actually people who are involved within this project, because you might have a project with your manager, you might have a project within your department. And so when I go here, I can go ahead and invite a team member. What just happened is that I've shared this priority list with my team member, and she can go in here and take a look at this and be able to go and say, hey, I see, these are the priorities that we work with. And so I can have this conversation with that person directly inside Party Matrix. And then down here, you have the different quadrant names. And so Party Matrix allows you to customize both the quadrant name as well as the quadrant color. And the reason we do that is actually very simple, which is as you use Party Matrix more, your organization might start building best practices. And so that means that quadrant 4 might not be postpone, or quadrant 3 might not be delegate. And so, imagine if you can say, you call this information documents, and then you can call this things to investigate, right? So if you have different types of projects, you can go ahead and customize that. And Party Matrix allows you to actually save all of these various terminology and whatever it is that works best for your organization. One thing that's powerful about Party Matrix is the ability for you to actually create templates directly from quadrants and projects that you actually have worked on. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you are a consulting firm and you onboard clients all the time. Well, whenever you onboard a client, let's just say you have 16 different tasks that you have to do for them, right? So task 1, due in 2 days, okay? And I'm going to say task 2, due in 3 weeks. And you can imagine these tasks being everything from talking to the clients, collecting information, sending invoices, etc. So once you create this with Party Matrix, you're able to save them as templates, so then you never have to recreate this again. So if you were to hover on this top right here, you can actually go and choose. I'm going to open the project details here and go here and choose Save Project as Template. And when I save this project as template, what it's doing is it's taking all those priorities that you've created and actually save them. So then when you have a new client or you're bringing on somebody new and you're creating a new project, all those tasks all get created automatically and all the due dates propagate forward for you. So that at the end of the day will save you a lot of time and effort within using Party Matrix, especially once you've decided what all these priorities are. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's some of the best practices that I want to share. Now, let me skip over to emails, because I think emails is one of those things where sort of we can never get away from, right? There's so many companies that's trying to, get rid of emails or reduce communication by emails. But what happens is external customers always, you're communicating via emails, and even if you're supposed to not use emails, your manager may send you an email, or your direct report may send you an email, and so forth. So with that in mind, what Party Matrix allows you to do is actually ensure that important emails never fall through the crack. So let me ask you a question. Imagine you got a customer email that's extremely important. And this customer email says, hey, could you send me a report on the work that we've done over the past 6 months or something like that? But you are not able to capture that information today. So what do? You want to go and answer that email, but you can't answer it today. You can answer in 2 weeks. So one thing that people do, a lot of people do, and myself included, I flag them. The problem with flagging isn't that it's capturing it. And I can even set, remind me, or rather, I can set a due date on an email as well. The problem is when I do that, I still don't understand when I should work on that email. And if I want to assign to somebody else, it's actually very, very difficult. So the way Party Matrix works is we actually have one of the most powerful integration into Microsoft Outlook. So let me show you how it works. So imagine if I got an email, okay? You can go ahead and go to the Outlook App Store and you search for Party Matrix. But when I have an email open, I can actually, once I install the Party Matrix add-in, I can open Party Matrix here on the right panel. And so instead of just flagging an email, what I'm able to do now is I'm able to take this email and I'm able to click on Capture Email. So what Capture Email does is it takes an email and turn it into a task. And not only that, you can decide what project it belongs in. Okay, so for example, let's see here, my team priorities, actually no, my Q3 goals for 2023. That's a project that we just created. And then imagine if this was an important customer email. First of all, it takes the subject to create the task name, but okay, so I'm going to create that task, and I can choose what quadrant it belongs in. So I'm going to go ahead and choose quadrant 4, and then I can assign it to another person as well. So what I've just done is that, or what I'm doing rather, is I'm taking an email, I'm setting it a due date, I'm prioritizing it and choosing what quadrant it belongs in. And so now I'll go ahead and create capture email. And you can see how it opens the item details here, just like I did in the project. And so if I were to go back to this view, you see that email from Outlook, the task has been created, it's been assigned to somebody, and then not only that, there's a due date as well. So the person that I assigned this to actually can go ahead and open their email as well on their own system. So one thing that's really helpful here is that I've just created a task, an action item from Outlook, ensuring that there's due dates, ensuring that there's an owner. And so then we can go back and respond to that email from the customer at any point in time, and making sure that that email doesn't fall through the crack. If I had flagged this email on my own Outlook, there's no way I can ensure that Eugenia would know about this. And so that's something to keep in mind about Matrix and about how to use emails and how to actually ensuring that those emails are never dropped. But one of the things that happens too is you can see how, by the way, like when I've created that task from that email inside Outlook itself, it actually tags it with Matrix, so it's very visual for you to know that. And so when I go back to a task that I've already created using Matrix, and so if I were to open Matrix here, you can see that instead of actually just allowing me to capture the email, I can open that item instead. So I can see the status and I can respond to the customer directly. But I can actually also take an email and attach an existing task as well. All you have to do is hover over a Matrix task and be able to attach it. Now, one thing I want to talk about real quick is our integration with Microsoft Teams. And so if you are using Microsoft Teams, then Matrix actually integrates extremely deeply into the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. And so you don't need Microsoft Teams to use Matrix, but if you do, there's a lot of powerful capabilities that actually would make your organization much more effective and much more efficient. So the way it works is go ahead and go to the App Store, find Matrix for Microsoft Teams. Once you do, you have this app on the left panel here, right-click on it and pin. When you pin it, Matrix exists directly here inside Teams. And so you can see, I can go back to that same list of projects. I can open the project. I can see everything that I have on the web app, all those emails that I've prioritized and so forth. Everything is here within Teams itself. But there's additional capabilities we have in Teams that actually is designed to make your organization more efficient. So for example, I can go to a chat section, and let's say when I'm talking to Eugenia here, if you go to this plus, you can add Party Matrix and something called the one-on-one view. So I'm going to show you an example of how that works. The way the one-on-one view works is it actually shows me everything I have in common, all the tasks I have in common with another individual. So earlier we talked about context. And what I mean by context is this. You have all these different projects, you have all these different areas of responsibilities, you have so many different tasks that you're trying to manage and juggle at any point in time. But if you have a meeting with your manager, you actually just want to be able to show them all the things you're working on, or vice versa. You have a meeting with your direct reports, you want to see everything that that person is working on, regardless of projects, regardless of which initiatives that they're working on, or which areas of responsibility they're focusing on. So the way the one-on-one works is it takes everything that you have across all of Matrix and then flip it around and use a people-centric view. And so that's what's happening right here. So you see, I can go to Eugenia, and I can add the one-on-one view, and I can do this with every single colleague that I have and able to see all the tasks I have in common with her, including that email I just assigned to her, right? And so when I click on this, I can actually go through and talk about it and have conversation around, hey, could you get this done, or what's the status of this? And it's very, very contextual, very focused on one thing at a time. And not only that, when I'm having a one-on-one meeting with Eugenia, I can actually add a shared task directly from here. And so what that's doing is it creates a task inside Matrix, automatically invite the appropriate people, and you can set due dates as needed. And so that's how the one-on-one works inside Microsoft Teams. But the other powerful thing about Matrix is that we understand that, your manager or your direct reports or your colleagues can ask you to do something at any point in time. Very seldomly do people always go to the appropriate software and so forth. So instead of actually having to jump through many hoops to capture those information, Party Matrix allows you to take a conversation right here, click on this, and create a PM item directly from any messages that anyone sends you. And the problem that we solve is extremely simple, which is, again, how many times have you had a conversation and then afterwards you realize that no one captured that task that you thought you were going to get done? 2 weeks later, you ask for the status and the other person says, oh yeah, I didn't write that down, right? And so with Matrix, you're able to capture that task directly from the conversation as you're having it without having to worry about jumping into Matrix or switching context, because you can create a task so easily. Now, I'm going to go and shift gear a little bit around and talk a little bit about some of the smarter capabilities inside Matrix. And the reason we do this is because, you've heard so much about AI, around AI and how to best leverage it in order to actually make it more efficient and effective for you. So one of the things that we've done is we added an onboarding system where the onboarding systems helps you turn a goal into a series of action items to help you tackle that goal. So for example, I can go to here and I can say how to increase sales by 20%. Okay. So imagine if I were to go to this onboarding process, what Party Matrix is going to do is Party Matrix is going to take that goal that you've just created and find and generate action items for you to meet that goal. The cool thing about this is we're actually not going to go and build this off of any customer data. Instead, what we're doing is we're leveraging the data that's already out there in the public space and then try to generate some best practices for you on how to tackle each of your goals. And your goal could be anything. It could be a personal goal, such as getting a promotion, or it could be a goal around helping your departments. And so that's something that I'm really excited about, because I think there's something that we can do to leverage a lot of the information that's already out there, because there's nothing unique about your goal. And I think that we have many different ideas and so forth, but the beauty is, with 8 billion people, there's someone else that's tackled that already. And I think the idea around generative AI is able to go and take that goal and be able to go and ask sort of the intelligence that exists out there already on how to build that. And so check out our onboarding, because what it does is it goes and takes those goals that you have for this quarter and starts building those action items for you. And the other thing I want to mention real quick too is the connectors. And so the connectors is the ability for you to pull in various action items into Matrix and be able to, for example, use Outlook or To-Do or Planner, et cetera, and actually being able to get that into Matrix, so then you have all your action items in one central place. So with that, I'm going to go back to Matrix just to talk about one more thing. Oh, by the way, so this increased sales by 20% was that that goal that I have that I asked the AI to do. And so I'm going to open the action plan, and you can see how here Party Matrix actually just generate this in real time for you on all the things that you can do. And you can see the quadrant category is actually different. It's around effort and impact, right? These are the things you can do with low effort, high impact. And all of this is generated in real time. And so again, if you are new to Party Matrix and you have doubts on what are the things Party Matrix can help you save time with, check out this particular process. So I want to go back to Party Matrix real quick and talk about how to get the most out of Party Matrix. And my number one thing around, if you're using Party Matrix today, there's two things you should do. One, you should always set due dates on your task. You saw how early when I create a task, I always have due dates on them. And then the second is to make sure that you prioritize the task within the appropriate quadrants. And if you were to do that, I think that you'll get the most out of Party Matrix with the minimal amount of work. I showed you capabilities around one-on-one. I showed you capabilities around the AI. I showed you capabilities around link or adding subtasks and so forth. All of those are secondary. If you're able just to go and create the task within the quadrants, and then ensuring that the appropriate people, the appropriate quadrants is assigned to it, and then with the due dates, that sends you reminders in Party Matrix, so then you actually get them done. Then I think you'll get the most out of Party Matrix in a very, very short period of time. In fact, within days, you'll be able to go and see that are you and your team members working on the right thing. Going back to the home section, if you go to home section, there's an alert. The alerts are essentially the task that actually requires your attention. So if we talk about reminders, we talk about due dates. Well, how do you know what are the things you need to work on? So Party Matrix will send you these alerts. And so that goes right here. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation real quick. And I want to talk about several things. One, if you haven't yet used our apps inside Teams and Outlook, and if that's applicable, definitely try to get it today. And then two, I would suggest that you create 3 projects right off the start. The personal priorities. These are the things that you have to do. And these are the things that you want to focus on at any point in time. The share team priorities. This is where you create a project and then invite the appropriate folks into it so then everyone can understand the priorities across your most critical projects. And then thirdly, make sure you pitch on them on why it's important to focus on a high impact task. Because one of the things that people struggle with is they don't want to use new software, right? And the reason for that is because it's another piece of software. And I 100% agree with that. I think that's the hardest part about using any piece of software, which is you have to do all this learning and so forth. And so instead, what you want to focus on is the importance of focusing on high impact tasks and the importance on creating that alignment. And that's what Party Matrix is all about, which is it's about communicating those priorities. So then you guys are on the same page. And so you're not using Party Matrix as just another task management software or project management software, but instead you're creating that alignment. So then you get those priorities out of people's head and into the matrix. So then when someone's on leave or when someone leaves the organization, you can look at their Party Matrix and understand, okay, these were the priorities that they had in the back of their mind, and this is what we need to focus on. And then finally, setting those due dates. The due dates are so important because then you can ensure that you don't drop them. And then set the reminders. This is what I do every single day. So I have more than 300 projects in my primary Party Matrix software. And I have just so many things that I can work on at any point in time. What I do is I religiously use the quadrants. I religiously use the due dates and reminders. I forward emails into Party Matrix every single day. And that ensures that I don't drop the ball. So success with Party Matrix should look like one central place for your team, your department, or even yourself to track all your priorities. And that everyone understand and are aligned on key tasks. And then the repetitive procedures are templatized to save time on future work. And that important emails are prioritized and never forgotten. So that's the takeaway that I want you to have from today's webinar, which is Party Matrix allow you to achieve all of these. And if you're able to do those things that I mentioned, I think you'd actually get this particular success with relatively minimum amount of work. Because at the end of the day, you're tracking the work somewhere anyways, right? You're tracking on a piece of paper, you're tracking on an Excel sheet, you're tracking on another to-do list. The problem is ensuring that everyone is within your organization is aligned and then having access to that so then everyone's on the same page. And so that's where the Party Matrix 4-quadrant methodology is really impactful. The integration to Outlook and Teams is really impactful. And the ability for you to add all these other metadata and so forth is the best way to ensure that everyone is aligned. And then hopefully what you'll find as you use Party Matrix is those identifying those things that you disagree on. And if you do, then let me know, because that means you're achieving success. So whenever you find that misalignment, whenever you find that you're able to save time and effort by not working on something that you shouldn't be working on, then you know you're using Party Matrix the right way. With that, I'm actually going to go and take a look at the chat here to see if there's any questions. So if you have additional questions around Party Matrix, definitely you can type in the chat right now and I'll try my best to answer them. And if there's any that I miss, feel free to shoot me an email to hi@affluence.com and I'd be happy to follow up, because if you do send me emails, I'll make sure I prioritize it and track it in Party Matrix. Okay, so let me talk about essentially data management in Party Matrix. So there are several ways to how Party Matrix works in terms of managing data. First of all, as I mentioned, we actually have several versions of Party Matrix. There's the standard SaaS app, which is what I've demoed here. And the way the SaaS app work is that when you have a project, you have permission control here. Within the permission control, if there's no one else on this project, then it's a personal project. And if you invite someone to a project, then they can see that project. But Party Matrix allows you to actually share projects across organizations. So what that means is that if you explicitly share a project with somebody else external to the organization, then they can access it. But if not, then they don't have access. So that's how it works. Now, our private deployments, our enterprise deployment, we have enterprise deployment for example, government entities, etc. What happens there is that the data there is actually siloed to that deployment and no one else can access it. So if your organization is working with very sensitive data and you want absolute control over access to the data, we actually have enterprise solutions for that. Otherwise, everything within Party Matrix itself has permission controls that allows you to go and decide what projects, who has access to what project, and so you're able to see that. And then another question is how to actually quickly assign tasks inside Party Matrix, inside Teams. In fact, actually, if you were to go to a Teams meeting, when you create a Teams meeting, you can add a Party Matrix tab into the Teams meeting itself, and that's called the agenda. And so what the agenda does is actually goes and identify, it's like an expanded version of the one-on-one. So the one-on-one is between two people. The agenda is between the parties involved in that call. So imagine you have 3 or 4 people getting together in the call. Party Matrix will actually allow you to surface up all those tasks that you have within the context of those people. And so that's inside the meetings integrations as well. The other thing regarding how to add one-on-one tasks really quickly is that if you were to go inside in the Party Matrix web app here, for example, and you click on this one-on-one view, you can actually switch between multiple people. So then you can have one person, right? So you see the task with Eugenia, but then I can also switch over to another person real easily, able to create shared tasks. And so that's very, very efficient. And again, you don't have to go and jump to another project and so forth, because when you create that shared task, I'll show you here, you can choose what project it belongs in, right? And so if whatever project that you share with that person will show up here, and you can scroll through it and select the project and assign that task. And again, one neat thing is you can say, again, call Sue, due tomorrow, 2 p.m., right? You create that due date directly from the task name. And so that will save you effort. So here, let me see some additional questions. So regarding there's a fantastic question, which is if you're chatting with somebody face to face, how do you actually, the best way to create a task? And one thing that's actually really neat is if you have your phone in that face to face conversation, Party Matrix actually works on every single device that you have. So for example, you can actually once you install Party Matrix for Teams, for example, on the mobile device, when you open Teams Mobile, you can open up Party Matrix in Teams Mobile and create that task. Additionally, you can, of course, access Party Matrix on your mobile device as well. We have native iPhone apps, you have native Android app. You can also go to partymatrix.com on any browser on your phone, and Party Matrix automatically adapt itself to the smaller device screen, and you're able to create tasks directly from there. The other thing that actually happens too is that Party Matrix has these concepts called inbox. And so, for example, so if I were to go to this inbox here, inbox are essentially items that does not belong in a specific quadrant. And so earlier I said how almost every task should belong within a project within a matrix. Well, there are always things that don't belong. And so when you go to here, there's something called the secret inbox, which is an email address that you have. When you copy that email address, so I'm going ahead, so right here, I have a special email address here. I'm going to go ahead and copy that email address. And so when you're having a conversation with somebody and you don't have access to Party Matrix for whatever reason, you can actually save this inbox address as a contact. And so you can actually just create a task directly from here by okay, so you see how I can actually create a task from an email itself. And so when you're in a meeting with somebody and you don't have access to Party Matrix, you just open up your email, literally create the task here. And and I can assign it to somebody. I can say, remind me daily, and then I have the content of email itself. And so I'm able to do that, and actually I can create tasks create tasks in Matrix from emails. And so there's many, many different ways to create tasks within Matrix, but those are some of the different approaches. So that's a fantastic question on how to capture that. And then the next question is, what happens to tasks when they're done? And so actually everything is captured and saved inside Matrix, especially when you mark tasks as done, for example. If you were to go to project here, and I'm going to go back to, for example, this particular project. And so if I mark a task as done, you see if I hover over this, and that's how I mark a task as done. Now there's a couple ways to mark a task as done. So I just mark one task as done. I can also type done here, or I can also change progress to 100%, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so you see how these two tasks, they disappeared. This one, I click on the check mark. This one I mark as done. So Matrix has filters because it hides the things that are done on purpose. Because if everything stays there, you're gonna get inundated with information real fast. And so when you go to filters here, you can actually choose and show me all the items that are finished, right? And actually these shows you finished items, or you can change this to show all items, letting you see all the tasks that you have. And so that's how you will just see finished tasks. And not only that, you can sort. Matrix filtering is extremely powerful because you can go and you can identify, again, items that are due, that are finished, that are unfinished, assigned to specific individuals, items that you follow. Follow means that you are a follower in the task. And so that means these are probably more relevant to you. And then you can actually sort them and then use everything from item tags and so forth. But anyways, that's how you would be able to see items that are due or that were completed. You go to filter here and then choose finish items or all items. The other thing you can do is if you want to see finished items across all projects, simply go to the search view. So the search view is essentially a way to see everything across all your projects. And so when you go to the search view here, it's very easy to find all the things that are overdue, all the things that are starred. And by the way, you need to see how when it's overdue, then the text here is red, and so it's very visual, and so it allows you to see that quite easily. And one thing you'll notice is if I go here, I can change the due date directly from here. I don't have to jump to the project, right? I can move a task between project as needed. But when I'm in the search view, it's searching across all my projects. So if I want to see all my completed task across all projects, again, I go to this filter and then I say finish items, and then I can say all quadrants or quadrant one. And that's how you can see all the tasks that you have that are marked as complete. And so again, completed tasks go away on purpose to sort of simplify your view, but that information is all available for you to see. The other thing that Matrix does is that, at the end of the day, if you think about it, tasks, it's just data, right? And so what that means is everything's in quadrants here, but sometimes you want to take a look at this information using a different perspective. So here I have the quadrants, but I actually can also go to the list view. So what the list view does is actually shows me all the things I have, but shows in a list, and I can see what quadrant it belongs in. But I'm able, if this list was really long, I'm able to sort it by when it's modified, when it's due, who is assigned to it. I can also go to the calendar view, which takes all the tasks I have, and actually you see how my finished items right here. But I can click on a task directly from the calendar view, and if I want to reprioritize it, or rather I want to move the due dates, I just drag and drop it. The Gantt chart, what it does is it takes the tasks that you have that you've created dependencies, which means you got to get A done before you get B done. And then our system automatically builds that for you. And then in each of these view, you can print it, you can export it, and then every chat as well is exportable. And so we have customers in compliance phase where they need to prove that they have work done on a certain date, a certain time. Matrix makes that information available very, very easily. You can literally right click on this and then actually you can go here and you can choose print chat. And so there's a lot of details I didn't go into, but Matrix has all the other project management capabilities that you need, including version control, seeing conflicts in data, etc. These are fantastic questions. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Again, one thing I'd be happy to do is field some of these questions that you have. If you send an email directly to me, hi@affluence.com, or of course, you can always contact our support, support@affluence.com. This webinar was recorded, and so afterwards, what we'll do is we'll post it, and then we'll send this out to you. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here today. And of course, thank you to all those who are watching this afterwards. And so again, if you have any questions, send me a message. Look forward to speaking to you at the next webinar.